Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Judge Chat Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Luca.
Anyways, all right. So for today's episode, we figured we could talk about retro formats because this current format sucks.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, no, like in all honesty, like this format's fine. It's very diverse. There's a lot of decks you can get away with playing, but at the end of the day, it's just not fun. Like it feels like we've been playing the same format for months.
Yeah, I think the main problem with it really is just that 'cause Kyle, I know you said you started playing 2021, right?
Yep, 21.
Yeah, so you don't know this experience, but it kind of reminds me of 2017 format, where like zoo format where we kept getting we got new stuff, but zoo was still just like better than all of like the new decks coming out. So and it's basically the same thing now where it's like cash is still just like better than most of the new decks coming out. Like even with like Unchained kind of entering the format, like Unchained and like Branded Chimera in the format now, like cash is still just better than those decks, I think.
Yeah.
So it's still like so it's very hard to like justify trying to get into new format when like the same deck is still just the best deck.
Yeah, no, there's like there are plenty of decks you could play. Like I said, like you mentioned, there's Unchained, there's Pearly, there's Dragon Link. I think is still a very strong contender. There's Manadium. There's I've seen a lot of people playing Sword Soul. There's Branded Chimera, like you mentioned. But yeah, it does feel like the format revolves around Kashtira. It's just even at like tier 2 events like regionals. Regional level events that you're just not seeing anyone playing Kashtira because it's just so fucking boring.
It's boring, and we've been playing that deck literally for like months since like February.
Yeah, I mean it's not really any better because we just mentioned Branded. I mean, sure, Branded has gone through like developments and iterations where Kashtira, the only development they had was losing a unicorn. That's literally it. So
and Diabolosis.
Yeah, Diablosis ban was a good ban. But no, so obviously, like the mainstay retro format that everyone knows is Edison format, which we both play.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Luca, what deck do you play? We talked about it a little bit beforehand, but
so I mostly play Welodad. For those that don't know, because you'll play if you'll play Edison, Welodad is basically it's a zombie deck. It's similar kind of like to the zombie Teledad deck, except that we don't have 3 E-Tele. So instead you play a card called Telekinetic Powerwell, which you've never read this card before. I don't blame you. Because I had never read this card before until our buddy Hatch like told me about it, and then I read it. I was like, "What the hell?" But basically, it's a quick play spell card. It lets you special summon as many level 2 or lower psychic type monsters as you want from your graveyard. Then you take damage equal to the level of the special summon monster times 300. So it's just Soul Charge for Carbon.
It is just Soul Charge. It is just Soul Charge.
Yeah, it's really cool because it combos really well with like the zombie half of the deck. Because the zombie half, basically, the entire idea is that you want to set up Goblin Zombie, and so a lot of like your combos just come around to like floating into a Goblin Zombie and then summoning a Carbons, synchroing to like a Brio, to then search the Mizuki, and then you can Brio pitch the Mizuki, bounce a card. Remember, this is pre-errata Brio too, so you can do this so you can like pitch cards as many times as you want each turn.
Yeah. And the important thing is, if I'm not mistaken, is Goblin Zombie is one of the few cards that doesn't miss timing.
It does not. So Goblin Zombie is a mandatory effect, so it can never miss timing.
Yep.
And you do have to be a little careful with chains and stuff, because if you tribute Goblin Zombie for say a Caius, because of how old Seagok worked essentially, Goblin Zombie, because it hit the graveyard, the game state sees that Goblin Zombie hit the graveyard before Caius, and since they're both mandatory effects, Goblin Zombie always has to be Chain Link 1.
Yeah.
So that is just something to like keep in mind, especially with cards like Pulling the Rug and stuff in the format.
Yeah, and So that's Welladad, and I've played Welladad. I tried playing it. I'll be honest, I didn't like it, but that's because I do not know how to manage my resources. I'm the type of player where, like, since I grew up in the balls to the wall combo era, I just do not understand like the concept of being conservative, like setting a card and passing instead of making a synchro monster, all that kind of stuff. And because of that, I found the one deck that I actually have played and 100% enjoyed is the new Gemini deck, which is hilariously cool. I genuinely love the Gemini deck.
Yeah, Gemini like is one of those decks where it's like the first time I heard about it, I was like, this feels like Cope, and then like I actually saw it actually, like, all right, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what the Gemini deck does, it relies on it's basically Gigavise. It's a updated Gigavise variant essentially, where you use Lone Fire to get into Gigaplant, and then when you combine it with Supervise, you can then summon back the Lone Fire, and then you can just do it again. But we're actually playing other Geminis, specifically the two that are big are Dark Valkyria, well actually three, Dark Valkyria, which is just a better exiled force because it just gains a counter and then loses a counter to pop a card. Gemini Soldier, which is a solo print from a structure deck, which is when it is a Gemini monster, when it's Gemini summoned, when it is in a battle, it is not destroyed by battle once per turn, and then when it's in a battle, you get to summon a level 4 lower Gemini monster from your deck. I think it's actually has to be level 4. And then the level 4 you normally summon is Blazewing Butterfly, which when it's a Gemini monster, you tribute it to summon back a Gemini monster with its effects, which like it's a lot of things to go through, but then you get things like, summon Blazewing, supervise the Blazewing, tribute the Blazewing, summon back the Dark Valkyria with its effect, and then you get to supervise, summon back the Blazewing. And then you get Dark Valkyria to gain a counter and pop a card. Which in a format where like set Raikou is still a valid strategy, it's pretty cool. It is just a combo deck. It is a modern combo deck in Edison format.
Yeah. Yeah, Edison format's like really interesting, especially like nowadays because so we should probably give a little context too. For those that don't really know how what Edison is, basically Edison format refers to the
March 2010 ban list.
Yeah, so it's the March 2010 ban list. It's pre Shining Darkness, which Shining Darkness just completely like warped the game. It was really funny. But basically, it's the format that was played at SJC Edison, which was the 75th one. It was the last ever SJC before they became YCSs. And the format's just like really cool. Like, notably, there was like part of what made like that format, like part of what made that event so cool is like top 16 was like 12 or 13 different decks. Like,
yeah, it was like the most diverse YCS I think ever. Maybe not like in modern era, but at that point it was one of the most diverse like big events you've ever seen. And that's what makes it so lovable nowadays, is just that it is so diverse. And even now they're coming up with new lists. I think even this past week, E3 Yu-Gi-Oh posted Gadget Wings, which is just a Gadget Blackwing deck. And it's just like, is it good? No, but the fact that people are still coming up with this stuff and genuinely testing it and trying it is hilarious to me. It's genuinely very cool. And I think that's the biggest problem with like other retro formats that like people know about, like GOAT format. In reality, GOAT format is like so unfun to me. Like, you have all the hand rip cards, you have Delinquent Duo, Confiscation, Forceful Sentry, Dust Shoot, and then you also have just complete bullshit like Metamorphosis, Painful Choice, all this stuff. And it's just, I just can't sit back and look at GOAT format and understand how people enjoy it.
Yeah, GOAT format has this like weird kind of like dynamic to it where you have all these like really, really powerful cards, but like the quality of the cards around those cards aren't like as good, just aren't that good.
Yeah. And then like you have,
so like obviously you have like the trinity of like Pog, Duo, and Graceful, but because like the actual like power level of the of like your monsters and stuff curve so low outside of like your bombs or your 1-for-1 trades and stuff. Like your actual deck, like the games just kind of turn into like weird slugfest where it's like you're just like 1-for-1 trading each other until you're both just kind of like left with like whoever top decks Pog first, just kind of like, or Moth just kind of like wins the game. You know?
Yeah, and then you have like
just,
then you after like GOAT you have Reaper format, which is the format MBT tried to like pioneer, but unfortunately it didn't take off because people realized how strong Cyberstein was, especially in a format where 3 last will existed. It just became
I think once people
terrible.
once people realized that like Stein, just like Hyrule Stein decks were just the way to play that format. Like the format became a lot. Like I think on paper the format seems really cool. Like it kind of similar to like it kind of feels this like real weird sort of like power gap between like GOAT and then like Perfect Circle format, where it's like you still have a lot of like the kind of like the format feels very efficient a la GOAT, but there's still a lot of like power card. Like you have like the quality of your cards are a lot better compared to GOAT. And because of the fact that like Scapegoat isn't in the format now, like you can actually like start again. You can like kind of focus more on these sort of like Saki Hyrule plays. The problem with that though is like you said, once everyone just kind of realized Stein was just like the best card of the format just became shit. Like
yeah, a lot of these retro formats that are like looked upon fondly are like tragically underexplored, and because they're underexplored, when they go back and try to re-explore them, they just get broken to hell. Like almost every like retro format that people explored between GOAT and Edison has either been Dark World is just the strongest deck you could possibly play, or there's those like just unfun, just blowout one-ofs like Cyberstein. And like for retrospect, like Cyberstein was a prize card. So even if you could get your hands on it, you could either play it, which you would get no value on it. You'd be devaluing it because you'd be playing it, slowly damaging it over time, or you could sell it for thousands of dollars. And most people preferred to do that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the way people kind of approach like older format, like the way that like the older decks just kind of like played was you kind of saw something similar with what's the card I'm thinking of? It'll come to me.
And like
it's Crush Card, like where Crush Card kind of had like a similar thing where it's like it's also a prize card, so if you played it you were theoretically devaluing it. However, the difference is that Crush Card, like if it resolved, you just like won the game on the spot.
Yep.
Like,
the only two prize
did
cards.
Have like a similar.
Yeah, the only 2 prize cards that I know of that did actually see play were Crush Card and then Minerva, the Lightsworn rank 4.
Oh boy, do I got some. Hang on, I'm gonna pull up a list of Yu-Gi-Oh prize cards, and I can tell you each one that saw play because I do actually remember like.
Yeah, because like, and the same thing is true with like one of the formats that I wanted to explore was Hat format. Because it's more control, but it has a lot more of the modern cards. Also, I think Xyz are where extra deck summoning mechanics kind of hit its peak. Personally, I don't think Links or Pendulums were ever that like fun. But the problem is Giant Hand was a prize card, and Giant Hand now has a very cheap printing that is like maybe a couple quarters. So that creates a very weird dynamic.
Prize cards in general have this weird kind of like element to it where it's like eventually they get reprinted and it like will kind of like drop their value, but like the actual quality of the cards themselves are still like fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trying to pull up the list, but my Chrome is being stupid.
No, you're fine. And yeah, so like to like kind of go off Hat format. So Hat format, I initially wanted to play because I found out that Ghost Trick Madolche was a deck that you could play around that time. And I was like, oh, Trick or Treat, Ghost Trick Madolche, funny. It's just kind of a fun, stupid deck that I was like, yeah, it might be fun to play. So I picked up like a good majority of the deck, and then I found out Angeli is just legal. I did not know that. Angeli is just a legal card, and because of that,
Primal Origin too.
Yep, and because of that, there is literally no reason to play Ghost Trick Madolche when you could just play Madolche. And That's why the format that I kind of want to, I've been trying to get people to, pick up the cards for it and explore it with me, is a fire water format, which is like just before it. But the other problem with hat format is just Infernity loops. Infernity is just the best deck you can be playing by like far none.
It's interesting to me because like a lot of people will try to like reignite old formats, like hat format, like Reaper format, like all these. But then like, and the idea is that like, well, these formats are actually really cool, but they're woefully unexplored is the problem, right? But then what winds up happening is people start exploring these formats and they just get solved, and suddenly like a lot of the appeal of playing these older formats was the fact that they weren't solved. But then they get solved, people kind of like realize like, well, this is just the best way to play these decks, and then suddenly the format just isn't as fun anymore because there's nothing like Edison at least fills this like really specific niche of the cards being like the format still being slow enough where like you do actually have to like trade, but there's enough, but the card pool is wide enough and the quality of cards is so high that either of them were like played during actual Edison format.
Yeah. And like also the other problem
like those decks did not get put on the map until recently.
Yeah, like, and the other thing that's like a problem with like hat format is there's just so many unfun cards that are legal. Like Maxi is legal, Vanity's Emptiness is legal, and those are cards like even if they aren't, even if they weren't like they're not like super expensive now. Like Maxi is like $10 a copy. Vanity's Emptiness is, I want to say, like 2 or 3. They're not super expensive, but it's still like, do you really want to spend actual money on cards that will not ever see the light of day in advanced format again, right? It's at least we hope they won't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like so like actually spending money on like a playset of Maxi, right? When we in the TCG, no player actually wants Maxi to come back, and I think that's very true after Master Duel. Like I think I heard I stopped hearing a lot of Maxi can come back complaints after Master Duel released, and people actually had to play against it.
I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that kind of like with the between like there was like a pretty big like spike, I feel like, between like 2018 and 2022 of players.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with like the advent of like more kind of like with like more channels like Crush Cards, for example, which are just kind of like, which kind of help like bridge that gap between like competitive and casual.
Yeah.
And so what wound up happening is like you got all these players who just never played with cards like Maxi in the format. And so they were just like, oh well, we want to I think, but they've only ever known like kind of like what you described, like the kind of like you described your experience, which was basically just like I came in like in 2021 when Yu-Gi-Oh had just become this like combo slugfest. So it's like when you have that perspective, and you've never played with a card like Maxi before, like you can kind of, I can see how that leads you to being like, oh well, Maxi feels like a card that should be good like for this like really fast format. And then Master Duel came out, people started playing with Maxi, and they were like, okay, I get it, I don't want Maxi back now.
See, the only logic that I need, the only explanation that I need to prove that Maxi should not be in the game is there are people that like come to my locals that either are immigrants from the Asian Pacific region, or they still have family there and they go visit from time to time. And when they go there, they actually have OCG cards and they play, and they will tell you that Maxi is just the bane of their existence. They just they've just accepted that it's there to stay, but they hate playing with it. Every player that I know, every OCG player I know, when they come back to the States or England or Britain or whatever, they're just like, I'm so glad I don't have to play with Maxi anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll hear that like argument from like TCG players, where it's like, oh well, OCG has Maxi and like they don't seem to mind it. Well, no, no. Every time I've heard an OCG player talk about Maxi, it's basically the same thing, where it's just like, oh no, I hate Maxi.
Yeah, it's just
like,
they've
they
accepted
don't like Maxi. It's just that Konami of OCG. It's just Konami OCG like thinks Maxi is good for the game for some reason. Yeah. Like I don't think they actually like it. Like I think they want to play like these cool combo decks similar to the decks we're playing here in the TCG, but Maxi gatekeeps those decks, and so like
Yeah, no. See, okay, and speaking of Maxi, like to like kind of piggyback off this, I was talking about this at locals today. Um, I think it's time to just bring Infernity Archfiend back to 3. Like, as long as Lawn Chair stays at 1, it's fine. Like, Infernity broke open. Yeah, Lawn Chair's still at 1.
Oh, no, Barrier's at 3. That's what
Barrier's
it was,
at 3, yeah. No,
I knew one of the cards I put to 3.
Yeah, like, when you look at it, like, sure, Infernity broke open a lot of formats back in the day. There's, like, obviously Hat format. Fire Water format has 3 Archfiend, 1 Launcher. There's a lot of format where Infernity just is one of the strongest decks that you could play at the time, and especially in retrospective. However, I just don't think set 4 Activate Archfiend will do anything in modern day, right? Like, is there really anything that Infernity is doing that tier limits didn't already do?
Yeah, so. Infernity has this weird thing where it's like when you actually like go back and look at like the Infernity combos, like a lot of them, like it's kind of like you described, where it's like they'll set up like a few like a barrier, like they'll set up like barrier break and like another thing, and like for that time period, that's really strong. But like nowadays, it's not only is like Infernity, like when you actually go back and rewatch like old Infernity gameplay, like it's crazy like how many times they'll like look at their hand and they'll just like set a monster, set a card, pass. But at the time that was like fine, it's like okay, I'll set like my Sigil Street Patrol and like I'll set like this like Oak or something, and I'll live a turn. But then you compare that to now and like they just kill, like your opponent just kills you, and it's like the Infernity will, and like Infernity can like try and like readjust and like build for the format. But like the overall, like we talked about, like Derek loves Infernity, and like he's always trying to like build Infernity, but like we just keep saying, like the problem with Infernity is that like the power level of all of the other similar comics is just higher. Like they can just do the same thing, if not more, with like less resources, and that's just like a big knock against Infernity. Like
yeah. Also, I think like I'm not 100% sure, right? But I think there's just so many decks that operate on an axis that is Infernity never really had to deal with. Compared to when it was, legal and like a top strategy, right? Like today, I decided I wanted to play something big air quotes here, fun, but mostly just different because I've been playing Unchained. I've been like one tricking Unchained for a while, and I just wanted a break. So I picked up It was a deck that was going to be for a series on the channel. I might still do an episode for it, but not like a full series. Where it was just Pacifist. It was Pacifist of Phantasm City. And that deck was like, it was not great because I went, it was 5-round locals. I ended up going 1-4, but I beat a tier limit player of all things.
Nice.
But it's like, what did Infernity like never really had to contest with like a deck like that, where it's like it just keeps doing it. Like it just keeps doing some of the token, grab a trap, that kind of thing. And it's, I don't know, I just don't feel like Infernity has the strength to really hold up. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad deck, but I like I said, just compared to everything else that you could be doing, I don't think Infernity with 3 Archfiend is really going to break the game. Infernity with 3 Lawn Chair might, but we'll leave that for MBT to figure out.
Probably. Pretty sure Infernity's like almost full power in the OCG, but again, Maxi could also, like, Maxi definitely influences that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So that's like retro formats. I mean, there's a lot to say about retro formats. There's a lot to love about retro formats. Like I said, I've been trying to get a couple players who are like, they're tired of the modern format, but they don't like Edison, for whatever reason, which there's a fair few reasons to not like Edison, right? Like, even though like Edison is,
there are some valid reasons not to like Edison.
Yeah, even though like Edison is far and away in my opinion, is like what a lot of people remember about Yu-Gi-Oh, being kitchen table, super fair, super back and forth. There are those one cards that you like rip off the top and windmill slam down on the table, and you're just like, I win the game now.
Yeah, I feel like every format has those cards. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy to me how people will like complain about that in both, like in like modern format, even like they'll complain about those types of cards. Those cards have always existed. Like, again, going back to like Go format, it's cards like Pog or Graceful or Duo, Reaper format. it's Stein. Perfect Circle format, it's like fucking just Treeborn. Like Perfect Circle is like probably like one of the few formats where you don't have cards like that. And then you have like they have like Dad Return and then Teledad, which is Dad. Like, you know, like there's always gonna be cards like that. Like even Hat format has Soul Charge.
Yeah, no, but like Fire Water
gonna have cards like that. Like, you're always gonna have formats like that. Like it's
yeah,
you know?
But no, like Fire Water format is the one that I've been trying to get a lot of people into because the way that I look at it, like it has a lot of the same like signs that Edison had when people were originally exploring it, like as like a retro format where it's like the original tournament where it took place was super diverse. There's a lot of decks you could be playing, even though there might have been one or two that were like supposedly better than everything else. There's still a lot of decks that you could play. And looking back, like the Mermail and Fire Fist were actually like not even like the top 5 decks you could play. There's stuff that's way better. The tournaments that I have seen being run from like Format Library and everything, there's never been like one deck that is just all top 4, top 8, or, you know, however many they're doing. And like it has a lot of the trademarks of like, there's just like a lot of rank 4 toolbox stuff that like, you know, you have Silent Honor, you have, I'm not sure Giant Hand was legal. I might be wrong about that. You have Diamond Diary. Yeah. Yeah. Fire Water, for those who are curious, is January 2014, where I think Hat is March 2014. I might be wrong about that, but
Hat, I believe, was it was whatever. Hat didn't become a deck until Primal Origin came out. So whenever that came out, that's what Hat format is.
Yeah, but the point is, like, you know, just like Edison, where, you know, there's a lot of toolboxy synchros and there's like maybe 1 or 2 that are for the archetype. It's the exact same thing in Fire Water, where it's like take Madolches, right? Like you might play 2 Queen Tiramisu as your like archetypal card, but then the other 13 cards are just like pretty standard. You know, it's like Silent Honor Arc, Diamond Dyer, maybe like Exciton Knight, stuff like that. And I think it has the potential to be a good format. Just it's not getting explored as much as Edison because people like Synchro Monsters a little bit more. To be fair, Synchro Monsters are way cooler.
Yeah, I think the format that I like really want to play more is Downer Rabbit format. Which Downer Rabbit format, for those that don't know, that's the March 2012 ban list. So that's and specifically like Nats of 2012. So it'd be like Chaos Dragons, Downer Rabbit, Wind Up, Inzektor. I think Gravekeepers was a deck. Could be wrong.
That sounds right.
There's like a lot of really Hero Beat was another deck. There's some really cool decks from that format, I think. Like that format definitely gets a bad rep because of as like, you know, the format that like Yu-Gi-Oh almost died. Like a lot of that is just like MBT like kind of over like MBT just like sorry, my cat distracted me.
You're good.
A lot of that is just kind of like MBT just kind of like over super underselling the format. Like MBT like like MBT like really over exaggerates like the issues with that format, but like and like there are problems with it, right? Like there are definitely like problem, but again, it's like the same thing where it's like there's going to be like any format you play, there's going to be like problem cards or like problem things, and like I think the overall like fun stuff you can do with the format is still there. Like there's still a lot of like variety in the decks in the decks you play, and I think it's another one of those formats where it's like it's underexplored. If it got explored more and probably like got solved, then maybe the format is actually just shit. I don't know, but like people just don't want to play it though because again, like you have people like MBT basically just like over exaggerating how bad the format was.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like a lot of the other formats don't have an E3 Yu-Gi-Oh, right? They don't have a Keegan. And what I mean is like Keegan is honestly, shout outs to him. He found a format that he loves and he can keep playing over and over and over again. But there's not a lot of people like that. Like even myself, even though I want to try out Fire Water format, I can guarantee after 2 or 3 months, I'm going to want to take a break and go back to advanced for a little bit. The exact same thing happened to me with speed duels. OG viewers of my channel will know I used to post a speed duel video every week. I used to post a deck profile every week. And after about maybe 2 or 3 months of it, I was just tired of like posting that content. I was tired of just constantly having to explore and innovate on the format. And Speed Duels is like a very close analog because we have 6 months between product releases. So I think it is just like part of the reason is we don't have content creators just constantly saying like, hey, Fire water format's really cool. You should try it. Hey, Dino Rabbit format is really cool. You should try it. Like, we just don't have.
Yeah, the closest we have is like Who Needs Meta, where like they just post like matchups from they'll just have like matches from like basically like every format. So like you actually do get a little bit of like variety, but it is still hard to kind of like. You're right. Like there's no like there's no one dedicated Fire Water. There's no one dedicated Dino Rabbit. There's no one dedicated to like half format, like, and a lot of these formats that are like, even like Duelist Alliance. Like I think Duelist Alliance is a format that like I'm surprised no one like really talks about, because but like in terms of like retro formats that people want to play, but like it's the same idea where like those formats, like that format is just like woefully under like people just don't really like. There's not a creator out there like trying to like push this format and like really talk about it, and so you just kind of like all these formats just fall to the wayside to formats like Goat, which have just like a huge cult following around them, and then Edison, which not only have a cult following, but again, like you said, like there's just people like E3 and like and even like MBT and all them who are like actively like propagandizing the format and like have like whole stuff around it. Like Nim Nim is another one. Like Nim Nim is like super into Edison. He talks about it all the time, and that definitely helped a lot of people get into it. So
yeah, and there's like. And because of it, like because of what Keegan has done, what E3 Yu-Gi-Oh has done, there are new content creators popping up, and maybe they're not like just doing that content, but they have entire like playlists of just like there's one that I'm trying to remember. It's the guy who popularized the Mirage Dragon like Monster Mash deck. It was for a series he does called Cursed Text, and it's just he finds a stupid like funny card that's legal in Edison format, like I think it's Baramet, the king of all beasts or whatever, and he just comes up with like dog shit stupid things and then just posts the combo of it, and then that gets people to say like, that's really funny, I want to do that, and it just perpetuates the format. It just keeps life in the format. And without those kind of creators, formats can easily die after a couple weeks of people trying to figure them out.
Yeah.
So,
or again, like you have issues like with Reaper, where it's like MBT was like, yo, I'm gonna like revive this format, and he did, and then it got solved, and people realized, oh shit, nobody wanted to play it anymore. Like, huh. Yeah. By the way, also, I was just gonna say, I do finally have up the list of like all the prize cards.
But before we get into
I can
that,
actually go down. I can go down the line and tell you which ones were actually like did see play.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I will go ahead and shout out this creator because I did mention him. So the Cursed Tech guy is Zuxid. Zuxid on YouTube. Zuczid. So, anyways, all right. Let's go through all the prize cards.
My cat is being a menace. All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Starting from the beginning with some SJCs. First of all, Cyberstein. We already talked about that. Cyberstein, for those that like, this is another thing that like even like old school players did, like the older players did kind of eventually figure out. Part of what made Cyberstein so threatening wasn't like the Stein decks. It's the fact that you could just like stick Stein into any deck and just like randomly rip it and then just go like, cool, pay 5, summon like a Cyber Twin, just kill you.
Yeah, because there was no deck that utilized the extra deck. Like even Heroes, which was not a playable deck, like it did not utilize the full extra deck. Because even at that point, there was no limit to the extra deck, or the fusion deck, I should say. So you could just play as many as you wanted.
Yeah, and especially once Cyberstein got reprinted in like DB2, it was so Jover. Yeah. Death Bowl Scout. Never. I don't think I'll play. Shrink did see play. Shrink was cool because like it just again it let you like beat over monsters, and then it eventually got and even like up through like Edison format where it still sees play in like in Gladiator Beasts.
I mean, it sees play in speed
Crush
duels
Card
like
bias.
crazy. Crush Card we already talked about, yeah. Everybody knows Crush Card.
Crush Card was one of those cards that was so powerful that like you warped your deck around Crush Card.
Yep.
Especially because like you were already playing cards like Sangan and Spirit Reaper just to like decks that like don't have like native dark monsters like Glad Beast, for example. Like they were still like they played Sangan and Spirit Reaper just so they could play Crush Card.
Yep.
And Crush Card was just so like backbreakingly strong that like if you own a Crush Card, like you just had a massive edge over the rest of the field to the point where it's like one of the most fucked up things was like teams where they would just like you would have a team of people and like they would basically just like share Crush Card, like the Crush Card between them.
Yep.
Which meant that like if one person had a Crush Card and then their teammate was going to an event, they would just let their teammate use the Crush Card. That teammate won. Now they have another Crush Card like between the team, and it's like
yeah. Now we're not going to get into this today, but I do have a very public opinion on teams, especially Yu-Gi-Oh teams. I don't think they're healthy for the format or for the game in general, and that is just one of the reasons why. That's one of the historical reasons why, I should say.
Yeah, Goldstark still sees play.
Crazy play.
Like Goldstark basically like only like recently stopped really seeing play. Like it saw play up through like 2020.
Yeah, I mean it was still seeing some play in branded because you could Goldstark away like some of the monsters that trigger when they're banished, but yeah.
Yeah, Thunder Dragon really broke it because you could Goldstark was basically just E-Telly for that deck. God, I miss it. Doom Caliber Knight.
Doom Cal's a weird one.
Doom Cal saw play basically up until the end of I want to say like 2013 is when I stopped seeing play.
I mean, yeah, Doom Cal Gadgets was one of the top decks. Doom Cal Gadgets was one of the decks that topped Edison, and it's one of the worst decks that ever topped Edison.
Yeah. It's really funny looking back at that. It's like people are just kind of like, how did this one? Caliber Cat is a cool deck though in Edison. Caliber
I have heard. I've heard good things about that. Yeah.
Yeah, Caliber Cat is basically just like Doom Gadget, but like better, because like you actually have like a Wake Edition. And then Dark End Dragon. Dark End Dragon still sees like Edison play.
Yep, that it does.
It was. I think Dark End Dragon was like I think probably like one of like the few like one of the first prize cards where it was basically just like if you had one it was cool, but if you didn't have one like it didn't like kind of like
it
didn't price you out of the format.
Yeah, like I picked one up for my Gemini deck because you can actually make it. The way you make it is you make Tuned Magician, which is a Gemini that just becomes a tuner and it's a level 4, and then you make it with Dark Valkyria.
And then Dark Valkyria.
Yep.
Yeah, and in this in Well Dad you usually just make it with like a 2 plus Mally.
Yep.
Like the easy way to make it. All right, and then now we're getting into the YCS prize cards because those are shown at Jump One. Smile.
Yep.
So you have the Dark Lord Trinity of Asmodeus, Superbia, and Adaria. Adaria, something like that. None of those saw play at the time. Superbia did eventually see play when Dark Lords became like kind of a deck. Which, by the way, if you ever want to like talk about the most copium deck like to ever like exist, Dark Lord was definitely one of them. But that's we'll talk about that later or another time.
That's a story for
Blood
another time. Yeah.
Yeah, Blood Mephist. Looks really good on a mat. Not a great card. Dvorak, King of Heavy Industry. Looks okay on a mat. Not a very good card.
Yep.
Giant Hand did see play. Giant Hand saw play in like a Frankfurt. Giant Hand was another like prize card where it was like it fit that niche of like prize card that is like good enough where like if you have one you can play it, but if you don't have one like you're not really missing out.
Yeah, no, Giant Hand like okay.
Ascension Sky.
Giant Hand was like
go ahead.
In my opinion, Giant Hand is like one of the first cards that really feels like a modern take on like an extra deck monster, right? Where you make it and it is a way for you to always be able to interact with your opponent on their turn. So I don't know. I think Giant Hand was like the big leap in extra deck card design for Konami. Anyway, go ahead.
I know, absolutely right. Like, I think the main difference, like, the thing with like Giant Hand compared to even older ones like Crush Card Virus. Like Crush Card Virus, when it came out, there wasn't another card like Crush Card Virus.
Right.
Whereas like Giant Hand, like at this point, by the time Giant Hand came out there were actually like generic extra deck cards that like could actually let you interact with your opponent to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, like Stardust is the obvious, like, is the obvious like thing that a lot of people will think about, but Stardust doesn't always let you interact with your opponent. Whereas
Stardust Dragon, Void Ogre Dragon's like the cool one.
Yep, Void Ogre is very fun. I'm trying to think of anything else. There was a lot of them. There's a lot of cards.
Definitely some options, I think, at that point.
There definitely were. But I don't know. I feel like Giant Hand like represents like kind of like that like it feels to me like a switch between an era, right? In history where they talk about, from here we can see a switch from them using stone tools to them using bronze tools, whatever. That's what it feels like to me, which is very stupid, but that is what it feels like, where when people got their hands on Giant Hand, they felt like, okay, this card is just very powerful. I can just stop my opponent from doing like any monster effect they need to resolve on their turn. So.
Yeah, basically. Ascension Sky Dragon, again, looks really cool on a mat. Not a great card. Minerva, the Exalted Lightsworn. Minerva's a weird one.
That saw play.
Minerva did see play. Minerva saw quite a bit of play. It saw some play in like Lightsworns. Not Lightsworns. It saw play in what did it play in Lightsworns? Something. It saw play in Shadowls. Because it did trigger the Shadowls, which something like Dante didn't do. Minerva always had this like issue where it obviously was a very strong card. The decks that it was played in, though, they were never like the best decks.
Yeah.
And so Minerva was one of those prize cards where it's like you needed to own it in order to play a deck like the Lightsworn deck from like 2016 format. Like in order to play like the Lightsworn deck with like Fairy Tale Snow and like the Ring 4 stuff, like you make Omega, all that stuff, like you needed to have a Minerva, at least one Minerva.
Yep.
However, that deck was not like the best deck, so it did not warrant you having to actually go out and get a Minerva. So like if you so it created this weird kind of like dichotomy of, if you wanted to play like Lightsworn competitively in that format, you needed one, but if you didn't have one, it's fine because Lightsworn wasn't even the best deck, so you could just go and build like something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And like still do well. So like it sucked if you wanted to play Lightsworn, but if you just wanted to play like the best deck, then just go build Metal Foes or Paleo or whatever. So Utopia Kaiser did so Utopia Kaiser never saw competitive play. However, it was part of this really cool Numeron Dragon OTK deck that did see some regional success. Yeah, really cool. Not very good, but it was really cool. Diablosis, the Mind Hacker,
eventually saw play.
It eventually saw play. At the time, it was like kind of mid.
Yeah.
Chaos Emperor, Dragon of Armageddon. That card's
a strong card that would eventually see play in Dragon Links. It only started seeing play in Dragon Link after the Bestials were released, if I'm not mistaken.
So it saw play before then too, in like Dragon Link, as just like a generic extender. It saw play even earlier though. Again, this is the if you only started playing like during COVID, you wouldn't actually really know this, but Chaos Emperor did see play in the Danger Thunder Dragon deck from 2019 format.
That's amazing.
Because there were like combos you could do with Eclipse Wyvern, which was legal at the time. It was another example of a card where it's like you did not need it to play that deck. Like I know, like I think like Jesse Kine, he won YCS Knoxville, and then Cody, he won Nationals. They both were playing like the Danger Thunder Dragon deck. Neither of them were playing the Chaos Emperor. You didn't need it to like play that deck, but if you had it, it was a nice little boost to the deck.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it did see play. It was pretty cool. And I like it, and I like CED. So, and then Duel Link Dragon is car sucks. And another verse dragon, really pretty matte, really bad card. Um, and then we got the new one. It's like another verse something.
Yeah, it's like the exact same stat line. It's just the art is. So I didn't really like another Earth Dragon. It was just kind of like generic. Like as like I looked at it and was like, that's a Yu-Gi-Oh card. But then the new one, I looked at the art and was like, this looks like something that would be like on the side of like a building as like a mural, and I was like, that's kind of cool. So I think the mat will be cool, and this kind of brings to the discussion of like a lot of people have been having about like should prize cards be like actually good cards, right? Like there's some like there was that rank 5 Earth Machine card that was just not playable at all. I don't remember which one that was.
Yeah, Dvorak.
Yep.
That was
like
Dvorak.
yeah, there were like there are cards like that that are like they have an effect and they're not playable at all. And then it's like it is like a collectible thing. Like if you did go and top an event and get one of them, it's like you're probably going to keep it forever, unless you really need the money or you just don't care. A lot of people are just going to keep like a lot of people are going to keep their another verse dragon or whatever the new one is called, right? But it's like when you have cards like Minerva or Crush Card or Cyberstein, where it's just like it's such a strong card, and you just it feels almost bad because you have to go and grind and grind and grind just to play the best copy of a deck that might not even be that good.
I think the so I don't think so words so Minerva isn't really comparable to like Crush Card.
Yeah.
Just as like an example, only because like again, like I said, like Minerva was one of those prize cards where it was like in order to play Lightsworn specifically, you did need a Minerva, but Minerva didn't. But it wasn't like a tier 0 deck, so like it didn't like complete. Like it's not like Teledad where like Teledad was tier 0 and Dad was so expensive it just straight up priced people out of the game.
Yeah.
Minerva, like the Minerva Lightsworn deck, like yeah, Minerva's like was like over $1,000, but like if you didn't own Minerva, then you had like 7 other decks to play.
Yeah, like
those other 7 decks were just better than the Minerva deck anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, and like let's like going from like a personal example, right? Like I know a lot of people love the Fluffle deck, right? Let's say the prize card for this season, instead of what it is like that vanilla card, it was a card that says is like a field spell that just says send toy vendor from your deck to the graveyard. That's an insane card, and it's like if I had to go and grind like 3 different regional like plus level events just to get that, and it wouldn't even be regionals, it would be higher. If I had to go and grind those events just day and night to try and get those so I could play the best version of Fluffle possible, I would be pissed. I would be even more pissed than it just being a vanilla. Like, it being a vanilla monster, in my opinion, that's a trophy. That's a card you don't feel bad about just slapping it on your wall and having it sit there for 20 years. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so.
I think I personally don't really mind when they have like prize cards that aren't like playable.
Yeah.
Like index. I think the Minerva example is like I know I keep kind of like downplaying it, but I do vaguely remember that did like because I wanted to play Lightsworns like back when I was in college, which was around this time, and I just straight up like my Lightsworn deck was just not that good because Minerva was like because I couldn't own a Minerva. Mm-hmm. Sorry, listeners. But fuck you, Colin. This was for listeners. You listen to my sneeze. But yeah, so like, and that is definitely frustrating. Like your example, like it is frustrating where it's like if you need a specific card to like if there's a card that will like boost the power of like your deck specifically, but it was like price walled out, then that is frustrating. I think and then the extreme example of that is a card like Crush Card, where Crush Card being a prize card just straight up like price gated people like so hard. Like like it basically said if you win an SJC, then you're probably gonna like just consistently top every SJC from now until like this card gets banned eventually.
Yeah.
I think the Another versus Monsters and even like Duel Link Dragon before it, they kind of present this interesting solution where it's like these cards do just look like really pretty. Like you can like they look really good on a mat. They look really good if you just stick them in a sleeve and then into like a top loader into like a little like shadow box and stick it on your wall or something. But they're also still like pricey enough where like you could like realistically sell one and probably make like a good chunk of change.
Yeah, and now one thing I will say is one thing I kind of wish is that they had different rarities to give out, either depending on the level of the event or the just player count at the event. Like, could you imagine like how cool it would be if like there was like if it's 2,000, 564, whatever, how many people it takes to get that many, like I think the max number of rounds you can have at a YCS is like 13, and you need 2,000 plus people to do that, something like that. Could you imagine if the first place player got an ultimate rare in Otherverse Dragon and there was only like 4 or 5? That'd be like cool. Like if they didn't, like, because I think it's just supers and ultras. I don't think it goes any higher than that.
First place you get the ultra. If you get like
second and third you get a super. Yeah. And it's like if there was like other rarities, then that would at least be cool. Then that's like a little bit of a badge of honor, right? It's like let's take like Jesse Cotton for example. Like this man has so many, right? It's like he wouldn't really care about his supers and his ultras and everything if he has like an ultimate rare or secret rare, another verse monster. But that's just one thing that I feel like is they should give it different rarities depending on like either the level of the event. So like nationals would have a higher like rarity than a YCS, but that's a minor complaint, and it is something they could fix like literally tomorrow. They're just not going to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't really mind it. Like, I don't want like prize cards to be cards that will just like gatekeep you out.
Yeah.
I think the Chaos Emperor is another example of a card where it was like it hit that sweet spot between like being strong enough where you could like put it into decks, but not so strong it warped like the meta around it. If I think that's like the absolute like upper of like what I would want a prize card to be, but I think like the Anotherverse monsters and Duel Links Dragon do also fit like are also like good alternatives to that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I think that is where we're going to wrap it up for today's episode. So thanks everybody for watching. Comment down below what's your favorite prize card. I think mine. Gosh, I don't know. I don't really have one because, like I said, I've never really competed for one. But I guess I think Giant Hand. I like Giant Hand. As I kind of talked about. Anyway, let us know what your favorite prize card is down in the comments down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.